as you can see, my name is Chinmaya Amte. So in terms of my overall work experience, I have around 3 years of work experience in financial services industry. So currently I'm working with ENY in a financial modeling role. Before that, I was working in M&G Global Services in a private equity and a private debt role. Before that, I was again working in EY in a financial due diligence role. And before that, I was working in an investment banking role at TresVista Financial Services. In terms of my geography, like I'm based out of Mumbai, Maharashtra, India. And like I graduated in 2018. So it's been like around 3-4 years that I'm working in corporates. And I'm also a content creator on LinkedIn. So I have close to around 25,000 followers, as you can see here. And apart from my like day-to-day job, like I'm very passionate about like, MS Excel, financial modeling, business modeling, Power BI. So I keep on conducting those workshops. And as Pratibha said, like I've conducted these workshops at various esteemed institutes. And that's a brief about me in terms of like what we can expect from today's masterclass is that what I understand is that at the end of this 3-hour session, you would know like what's the gamut of Excel, like what are the topics which are there in the around the Excel universe. Like we all say like, basic Excel, advanced Excel, but these are meaningless terms after a certain point, unless we move into the specific, like what do you mean by basics of Excel? What do you mean by advanced of Excel? So you would understand the gamut of Excel. I would be demonstrating some case studies as well, like which I have worked upon. I'll be showing that to you. I'll be showing like how an Excel user thinks and what's the right approach while working on Excel. Third thing we would be discussing is about what type of Excel versions are there, how to install Excel, and more about the technical and procedural aspects of the Excel, because in Excel there are multiple versions. And it's very important to stay on the right version, like stay on the updated version so that you are like at par with what's happening in the industry. And the fourth and the most important thing is how can I learn Excel? Like, what will be the learning resources for Excel? I'll be focusing on that. And the fifth is how can I bring Excel out in my CV and my resume? How can I make case studies? How can I make sample projects so that I can get enough shortlist for the interview? How I stand out for the interview? So that today's session will be divided into like these 5 chunks and buckets. So like that's like, slight brief about the session. So let me just start with the basic content on like, why should we learn Excel and what's the relevance of Excel. So what I'll be doing is that in the session, I'll be making some notes. I'll be typing out those notes and I can share the notes with Pratibha, and she can share it with you so that you have the documented reference of what all things we discussed and the relevant links for the same. And second thing is that I have made some case studies. So in case a time permits, so I'll be demonstrating the case studies, but in case we have some more time, so I can share those case studies with you and you can also practice it hands-on once at your systems. So just wanted to know, like, before we start the session, do you guys have access to the laptop? Like yes or no? Like you can let us know in the chat box. So in case if I share the case studies with you, would you like to practice it and would you be able to practice it? So just wanted to understand that. Anshul is saying she has access to laptop and she's willing to practice the case studies. That's good, Anshul. I like your enthusiasm. Thanks, Vishal. Okay. Okay, that's nice to know. Cool. So I'll be sharing those case studies and we will be practicing those case studies as well together so that you also get a hands-on feel on like, how actually the things happen in the Excel world or, in terms of data analytics or in terms of the modeling. Cool. Now let me start with the very first requirement in terms of like, why we should be learning Excel and why Excel is such a very important tool. So in terms of like a corporate setup, so most of us would be working for MNCs or corporates jobs only, or even if you like have a self business or like, you're an entrepreneur like Pratibha. So in most of the situations, like you would be using Excel for 2 major things. And the 2 major things are, one is data analysis and second is data visualization. So when I mean by data analysis, so it can be any chunk of data analysis. It's just numbers and we have to crunch numbers and we have to make a meaningful analysis out of those numbers. So just to give you an example, like let's say we have some data about COVID, like we went through the pandemic. So you have some data about the COVID scenarios, right? You have city-wise patients, you have state-wise patients, and like you have the number of vaccination data. So how do I analyze the data? And why would I analyze the data? I would analyze the data to make key business decisions, right? So the purpose of any analysis is to make a business decision or is to make any organizational decision, like if you're working in a not-for-profit setup. So that's where the Excel comes into the picture. Now, like, let's say if you are analyzing the data, like let's say about the COVID cases, then or let me just do one thing. Let me just reshare my screen and I'll take up an example and let's see how actually the data analysis works. So now, this is like a very simple case study, right, which I have designed for all of you. So if you can see, we have names of the people, we have their email IDs, and we have their designations, right? Now, this is the data as an HR which you have received. Like, let's say you're working as an HR analyst. So can you guys tell me, like, what would be the one key question or one key answer or analysis you can make out of this data? This is like a raw data dump which you have received for all the employees working in your organization, and let's say you have to make a presentation out of this or you have to summarize this data. So can you tell me, like, what would be the one key relevant analysis which you can perform from this data? Like, just observe the structure of the data and see, like, what you can do from this data set. Any thoughts, any ideas? You can put it in chat box.
Maybe the number of designations. When for example, each person is associated with a designation, and we can get the count, and we can represent the same in graphical or some other way.
Yeah. Perfect. So that was like a perfect answer, Varshini. So what you can do this out of this data set is that you have various designations in the organization. So you can understand what are the unique designations in my organization, right? So that's first insight you can draw. And the second insight you can draw out of this data is that how many employees are there at every designation, right? Like, let's say if I take the context of India, so we have one prime minister, but we have 28 chief ministers, right? So given my organization, I just want to understand, like, what's the scale of employees at which the people are working in my organization. So I want to know, like, how many analysts are there in the team, how many associates are there in the team, how many managers are there in the team. On the basis of that analysis, I would be making a decision. I might realize that there are very few associates working in my team, so I need to increase the hiring at an associate level. I might realize that there are a lot of managers in the team, so maybe I need to cut down costs, like, transfer managers to different departments. So these are the different types of analysis which you make from the data. So that's the first and the key most important point of, like, working in Excel, is that to make data analytics, like to analyze the data and to make business decisions out of it. So that's one of the first key things Excel is work for. And the second thing Excel is work for is in terms of data visualization. So if I make an data and if I just like present it in the number formats, it's not very appealing to the audience, especially when we make presentations, we make show presentations to, like, board of directors or maybe like senior people in the management. We many times present it to the layman, like, if we are publishing a report or something. So it's always good to, like, get good visuals out of the data. So another key thing which we work on Excel is in terms of data visualization. So I don't want to present my data in terms of simple plain numbers and tables. I want to make illustrative charts out of it. So we make a lot of charts data, like we can make wonderful charts, like wonderful visualizations in Excel. So these are the two key things which should be, like, why we should be learning Excel, like data analysis and data visualization. Now we understood the need of Excel, like, why do we use Excel? Now let's move on to the gamut, or, like, the universe of Excel. So now let's try and understand, like, what all topics are there in Excel universe, and how should we learn, like, what is the relevance and the significance of each topic within the Excel. So now let's define the universe, or the way I like it to call it as gamut of Excel. Now let me just see the chat box if we have any questions. Yeah, those were the right questions. So now let's do one thing. Let's have a simple, like, interactive game where you can tell me anything which you know about Excel. Like, like, let's say when Excel comes to your mind, what are the things which you are aware of? Like, what are the things which you are aware of in Excel? Maybe it's the name of the function, or maybe it's some programming language associated with Excel. Like, what are the things which you know about Excel? Like, can you just quickly put it in chat box? Like, what are the things which you are aware of around Excel? Like, the terms associated with Excel. Maybe it's the function name or anything else. Like anything which you know. Okay, recreation, pivot tables, interesting. Data validation. Okay, pivot tables. We look up somewhere basic Excel. Okay. Okay. Cool. Fine. I have got a fair share of answers. You can keep putting answers in the chat box. Now I have defined Excels into 5 different modules. And I'll be walking you through each module, and we will be discussing at length, like, what each module covers. The first thing, it's not a term, but I would like to call it as, like, basics of Excel. So I'll tell you what I understand and what I mean by basics of Excel. Second is advanced Excel functions. Third, which I like to call in Excel, which is like the new addition Excel, which is called as the concept of dynamic arrays. Anyone has heard this term, dynamic arrays, in Excel? Yes, no, if you've heard this term called as the concept of dynamic arrays. Fourth is something which is called as Power Query. Okay. Anyone aware of the word Power Query in Excel? Like, what does Power Query mean? Like, what are the use cases of Power Query? And the fifth and the most, like, used heavily uses something called as VBN macros. So I would define Excel in terms of, like, these four have like, this five classifications. Also, VBN macros includes, like, different add-ins which we use in Excel. I'll talk in length about add-ins. And also, when it comes to Power Query, I would introduce something called as Power Pivots as well here in Excel. Power pivots are very different from what we usually call it as power, like pivot tables, and power pivots are different. These are two different concepts. Cool. Now, when I say basics of Excel, like, what you should be aware of, like when it comes to basics of Excel, like let's say I understand the majority of the audience here are, like, college students, like, recent graduates, and let's say you are working in a like college, and like you're applying for job interviews, and like, you're preparing your resumes, and you want to join a corporate and start working. So ideally, every corporate would have some kind of an assessment test in the interview process. And many a times these are also like basic Excel tests just to test your Excel knowledge. So what is usually covered in basics of Excel, and these are the things which you should be knowing in advance, is something called as there are functions and formulas in Excel. So in terms of basic Excel formulas, so the formulas you should be knowing is that you should be knowing the if function, you should be knowing the VLOOKUP function, you should be knowing the SUMIFS function, COUNTIF function. So these are some basic functions which you should be aware of, like, as a basic Excel user. Also, in terms of basic Excel, you should be aware of, like, what are pivot tables, what are charts, like, how to make charts into Excel. So all those things are you should be aware of. You should be aware of keyboard shortcuts. We will be discussing some keyboard shortcuts as well, so that you like, you're efficient while working on Excel. Like, you don't end up spending a lot of time. You're efficient with your fingers. You, like, type out really fast. And also, keyboard shortcuts helps you to reduce the errors, because when we use mouse, what happens is that we drag and drop things, and there is a cause of potential errors. So, like, basic like, keyboard shortcuts, and like, few basic concepts of, like, the concepts of date in Excel, like, concept of date, and like, the structure, overall structure of the Excel workbook. So these are the things which a person should be knowing when it comes to basics of Excel. So if you know these things, then you can say that I am a basic level, or like, I have passed the basic assessment of like Excel knowledge. When it comes to advanced Excel, it's basic and advanced. These are just the terms. Like, there is no standard definition given by Microsoft or any organization or any law or contract. These are something which I am sharing out of my experience and what I have seen in the Indian industry. When I talk about advanced Excel, so these are like similar again functions in Excel, but you should be aware of, like, functions like index and match. You should know a function something called as offset. You should know a function called as sum product. You should be able to use, like, add-ins like goal seek. And then there are like a lot of, subject specific questions. So I can see like a lot of you are MBA graduates. There is a concept called as XNPV. XIRR in Excel. So these are all topics which you should be aware of. Like, how do we do these things in Excel world? Like I know how to calculate time value of money on a piece of paper, but how can I do the same thing in Excel? So you should be aware of all these things. So these are something which come under the advanced category of Excel functions, like knowing index match, knowing offset, knowing sum products. So these are some new concepts. These are some advanced level concepts. Now, in terms of dynamic arrays, so this is an update in Excel which happened in 2019. So before 2019, the concept of dynamic arrays was not there in Excel. After 2019, the concept of dynamic arrays has been introduced in Excel. So what do I mean by dynamic arrays? I'll discuss, but there are new functions. There are 6 to 7 new functions which are introduced in Excel. So the new functions is something called as XLOOKUP. Then you have something called as a filter function. Then you have something called as a sequence function. And then you have something called as let and lambda. So these are the new functions in Excel, like lambda function, let function. These have been introduced just like 6 months back, 1 year back. So these are like the most recent updates which are happening in the Excel world. So you should be aware of these stuffs. Then there is something called as Power Query in Excel. So what's the use case of Power Query? So Power Query is used for data cleaning, and it is also used for web scraping. Now, can anyone guess, like, how many rows of data can we have in Excel? Any guesses, like how many rows of data can we have in an Excel file? Leverage chat box, guys. Keep the session as interactive as possible, and you have to guess a random number. You can just say something randomly. Don't worry if your answer is right or wrong. It doesn't matter. Like how many rows are there in an Excel file? Anyone has any guesses? Mohsen is saying that he doesn't have a guess, but you just have to guess a number. You can just say any number of your choice.
Maybe above 1 lakh.
Okay, Varshini is saying 1 lakh. Siddhant is saying 10,000. Aitha Bhavana is saying million. Okay, cool. Now let's do one thing. You all have access to your Excel file, right? So this is not a question which we supposed to guess the answer. This is something, a calculation. You should know this answer, right? It's not something very difficult. What you have to do is just go to any random Excel file, and just press 2 keys, which is Control and down. Control key and the down arrow key. I'll just mention it here. Press Control plus down key, down arrow key. So press Control and down, and you can see I've got my answers. So I'm on the last row of Excel. Can you see this is my last row of Excel, which states at 10,48,576. So there are 10,48,576 rows in Excel. So you can have how much data? So you can have data to the tune of 10,48,576 rows of data in Excel. So you have to do is press 2 keys, Control and the down arrow key. So just press Control and just move to the down. So this is another keyboard shortcut which helps you navigate within the Excel. So you can see now at the bottom right. So these are the number of rows which I have in Excel, which is 10,48,576. So these are the number of rows which we have in terms of the Excel file, right? Now, what if you want to analyze data which is 1 crore rows? How can I do that? 1 crore rows or 2 crore rows. Like let's say I have data about which is very big, and I want to analyze that. So in those cases, what happens is that Excel has a limitation. So there is something called as Power Query in Excel, which helps you to analyze countless rows. So Excel has a limitation of 1 million rows, but Power Query can have an analysis for unlimited rows in Excel. So that is the use case of using Power Query in Excel. That's a new concept in Excel, which was introduced in 2016 or timelines. So that is something which you should be aware of. And then there is something called as VPAs and macros. Now we will be discussing in depth also like what is VPA, what is macros. We will be coming back to that particular topic after a while. I'll sharing one post also which I had written. But these are the topics which you should be aware of when it comes to Excel. So any user, or let's say you are joining a master class, or you're joining any course, or you're subscribing to any modules, you should cover whether these 5 things are covered in the particular Excel or not, Excel tutorial or not. If these 5 things are covered, then I can see that you're a complete Excel user. So you are aware of all the things which are happening in the Excel world, which are very much relevant for what's happening in the industry. And then of course, like these are just the basic topics and one-liners. Like in terms of VBA, you have to spend 100 hours, 200 hours, 400 hours to learn the entire VBA. Or when it comes to dynamic arrays, now we know that dynamic arrays is a word. There is a function called as XLOOKUP and filter. But to learn all this function, it will take at least 100 hours, 150 hours to master all these functions. But now with this, with this gamut of Excel, you are at least aware of what are the options or what are the functionalities within the Excel universe. So I'll just wait for a minute in case anyone has any questions or any doubts, to what we discussed or something is not clear. You can unmute and raise that question. So just to summarize what we learned so far. So we learned 2 things so far. One is what's the use of Excel. So we understood that the Excel is used for data analysis purpose to make business decisions. Second, we understood that Excel is used to make wonderful visualizations which appeal to the audience, to make charts, to make infographics, so that the presentation is not boring and it's appealing to the audience. And then we moved on to the gamut of Excel, like what are the different areas or topic areas which are there in the Excel universe. And we created an awareness about those Excels. Now, tomorrow, if someone asks you, hey, Chinmaya, what are the things which are there in the Excel, you should be able to speak up those things so that it shows that this person is aware of what's happening in the Excel or the analytics world. So we'll just take a 30 seconds to 1 minute pause. You can unmute and ask any questions, or you can just put it in the chat box, and then we will move on to some other details regarding Excel, which is like the version of Excel and how you can subscribe to Excel.
Sir, what is data cleaning all about, sir? If we have a data, then what do we have to do in that which can do that function of data cleaning?
Cool. That's an interesting question, Kunal. So I have already a case study for that. So in that particular case study, I'll be addressing this particular question which you have asked. Anyone else has any query, any questions?
I guess we can move ahead then.
Yeah. So now let me come to the Excel versions, because that's also very important thing to know. What are the different Excel versions, Excel 2013, Excel 2016, Excel 2019, Office 365. What should I be using, and what's the most relevant version? So let's talk about the versions of Excel. Now, in terms of versions of Excel, so any idea when Excel was released? Like anyone would like to get a wild guess the year in which Excel was released? Take a wild guess, guys. I mean, you just have to quote an year. 90s. Okay. So Kunal is saying 90.
It was not that famous during that time, but in 20s it got famous, and the 2016 Excel had many functions which led to the growth of this, I guess.
So Bhavna is saying 1980s. Okay. How many of you agree with Bhavna? Like, is she right or wrong? Just take a wild guess, guys. I mean, I keep on asking this question just to ensure that, the audience is not sleeping. So that's also my trick question or agenda behind this, asking these questions. So yeah. So we have a good audience, and most of you have given the right question. So Excel was first released in the year 1985. I'll talk about the history of Excel as well. It's kind of a very motivational and inspiring story on how Excel was invented and the challenges which they faced. So Excel was released in 1985, and today we are standing on 2022. So it's almost if I calculate, so it's almost 37 years, Excel is there into the industry. So there are a lot of versions which have happened because of long existence, almost 30 to 40 years of existence. So in terms of the versions of Excel, which version is the most updated one? So the most updated version of Excel is, anyone, any guesses? What's the most updated version of Excel?
So Microsoft 365. So
Correct.
with
So
data
Microsoft
analysis stuff and all.
or Office, these are interchangeably used by Microsoft community. So you can say Office 365 or Microsoft 365. So Office 365 or Microsoft 365, this is the most recent version of Excel. And this version of Excel is something called as, it's not a static version. It's a live version, I would say. It's the live version of Excel. And I'll come to what I mean by live version and static version. And the most recent static version of Excel is Excel 2021. Right? So what do I mean by a static version and what do I mean by a live version? So what happens in Office 365 is that it gets updated on a continuous basis. So every month you will have some update, every quarter you will have an update, or every 6 months you will have an update. So once you buy on an Office 365 channel, you can like update the Excel like every 6 months, 3 months, it gets auto updated. So all the latest features which are there in the Excel are automatically updated. So it is called as a live version. And static version is something which you buy and then you have like very limited updates. Like, you are all fixed on that version. And then like, you stay with that version. So generally static versions are prepared, are not heavily used. Most of the corporates, they work on the live version because why? Who would not like an update, right? We update our phones, we update our apps every day in, day out. So who doesn't like updates? So most of them use Office 365, Microsoft 365. But 2021 is also used by like schools and colleges where they have defined a curriculum and they don't want to change the stuff. So like most of the educational institutes, they end up like having a static version of Excel. Or maybe someone who has a cost constraint. We will talk about the costing as well. We will directly go to the Microsoft website and understand like what's the pricing. But like if someone has a cost constraints, then they go with the static version of Excel. Now, what version of Excel I am using? Like, how do I know which version of Excel we are using? So you just have to simply go to File. In the file, you just go to Account. And in the account, you can just go and see About Excel. Yeah, correct. So can you guys see like what's written on my screen here? It's written as Microsoft 365 MSO version 221 build, 64-bit version of Excel. So Microsoft 365 means that I'm on the latest version of Excel, which is like Office 365, Microsoft 365, which it's interchangeably used by Excel. So these are the things which you should be aware of, like how to check the version of Excel. So can you guys quickly check the version of Excel you are on? I'll just repeat the steps, how to do that. It's fairly simple. Just go to the file option. In the file option, go to the account option. In the account option, you just have to go to something which is called as About Excel. You just click on the About Excel and you can see what is the version of Excel you are using. So just do these steps and put it on the chat box, like which version of Excel you are using. Neha is also using Office 365. But let's be observational. So Neha has given us an answer, and she's saying that Office 365 and my version. So can you see a slight difference between what Neha had typed and what's visible on my system? There is a very small, minute difference in terms of what Neha has mentioned in her chat and like what's visible on my system. Apart from that number, so what Neha has mentioned is something called as 32-bit. And what you have seen on my screen is something called as 64-bit. So this is like a small difference between my version and Neha's version. So we'll talk about it. What's the difference? But I'm just waiting for like a couple of more responses to see what version of Excel you are using. So Bhavna is using Office 2021. That's nice. Let's see what else people are using. Anshu is using Office 2016. Okay. Cool. So we have a decent number of responses. Cool. So what I would suggest everyone is that get on the latest version of Office 365 or the Microsoft 365. Avoid static versions because these have limited updates. So this is about the version of Excel or like the version of Excel. Now, one more important question which we had was 32-bit versus 64-bit software. So I would encourage everyone, like whenever you're installing Excel, always install 64-bit version of Excel. Why I am saying that always install 64-bit version of Excel, because 64-bit version of Excel is faster than 32-bit version of Excel. The 32-bit version has a limitation that it cannot use a RAM size beyond 4 GB. So 32-bit cannot use RAM of your computer beyond 4 GB. So like, let's say if you have a computer with a 32 GB RAM, right? Or maybe 100 GB RAM or 128 GB RAM, but you are working on a 32-bit Excel. So what happens is that all your RAM is going waste because 32-bit has a structural limitation that it cannot use RAM beyond 4 GB. So it's very slow while working on a 32-bit software or 32-bit version of a system. So always ensure that you have 64-bit version of Excel. So whenever you are installing, install the 64-bit version of Excel. So whenever you are installing, Microsoft will ask you whether you want to install 32-bit version or a 64-bit version. So that ways you will be you should be downloading 64-bit version of Excel so that it's more faster and more efficient for you to work on. Cool. So now just to summarize 3 things, we learned about like the need of Excel, we learned about the gamut of Excel, and we learned about the different versions of Excel, the static version, the 32-bit, the 64-bit version, the Office 365 version. We also understood like, how we can choose a specific version about a particular, when we are on an Excel system, how do we know on which version of Excel we are working off? Cool. Well, just wait for 30 seconds to 1 minute. In case anyone has any questions or any doubts or any queries, feel free to put it in the chat box, or you can unmute and speak. Yeah, Daniel, that's a correct question. So your Windows version should also be a 64-bit version of Windows. So everything you should be working on should be on 64-bit version of Excel. Cost accountants, okay. Cool. So let me just do one thing now. So since I'm speaking almost for the last 45 minutes, I understand the theory can, at times get very boring or intimidating and a lot of theory coming your way. So let's do one thing. What we would be doing is that we would be practicing some hands-on case studies. So I'll share an Excel file with you. You can download that Excel file, and then we would be understanding how actual work happens in an Excel environment. Now, the first question which Kunal asked, Chinmay, what do you mean by data cleaning, and what's so understand, guys, like when you're working as a analyst in a corporate setup or in any given setup, we all know how to calculate the average, right? This is like a 7th standard or an 8th standard question. But the real life challenge is that you won't get data to calculate in such a manner that you can, easily calculate the answer. Right. So the first step of an analyst is to clean the data, to get the data in a right particular set of format so that you can perform mathematical operations on that. And then you can derive business decisions out of it. Now, Kunal said, there is an average formula in Excel. So I just simply type out average and I just do it. I'm getting an answer, which is an incorrect answer, and it would get an incorrect answer because this is not a text. This is not a numerical data. Average can happen only on the numbers data. Right. So what most of you might have done is that, you might have written 24 here, 21 here, and then, you might have calculated the answer, but we don't want to do things manually. We want to automate the data. We want to automate the process of, finding the answers. Now we would be using, as Pratibha rightly said, so there is a concept called as text to columns in Excel. So we would be using the concept of text to columns. And then I would be adding a flavor of something called as dynamic arrays also to this particular solutions. And this won't be available in everyone's systems. So just see it on my system and just get a feel of what is the concept of dynamic arrays. Now, how to use text to columns in Excel? You just select the data. Now, how do you select the data in Excel? So you just press Shift key and you use the arrow keys. So Shift and arrow keys will select the data, and control and arrow keys will navigate across the data. So if you can see, if I do a control and arrow, I'm moving here and there in the data set, right? But the moment I put Shift and I can put a down arrow key, it selects the data. So the first step is to select the data. You can go to data tab. You can go to something called as text to columns. The moment you go to text to columns, you can see it asks you how to split the data. So for choose the first option as delimited, click on next. Now as Excel is asking ki how is your data separated? See, everything is intuitive, everything is logical. Now we have to tell Excel, ki, Chinmay, how is the data, like, Excel is asking, how is the data separated? So we know that every data has a comma set in it, right? So I'm choosing comma as my delimiter because my data is separated by commas. So I'm choosing comma, and moment you see the comma, I'm getting a data preview, right? So see the option of the data preview here. The moment I select comma, Excel is showing that the data will be split in this particular fashion. So I click on next and I click on finish. Now you can see my data has been separated into different columns. Now I have names in the first column. I have gender in the second column. I have location in the third column, and I have age in the fourth column, right? So this is how I've split the data using the concept of text to columns. So I'll just repeat it for the benefit of larger audience, how to do that. The first step is to select the data. So you can use the shift key and arrow keys to select the data, or you can simply select the data with the help of a mouse. So just do a left click and just select the data. You go to the data tab in Excel, which is data. Then you go to the text, something called as text to columns. You go to something which is called as delimited. You click on next. You choose comma. You can choose depending on what type of data you have. Here we have data separated by comma. Sometimes it can be separated by semicolon. You choose comma, click on next, and then click on finish. You can see the data is split across different columns. So now we have data in different columns. And now what we can do is we can use the concept of average function in Excel. So there are different functions and formulas in Excel. We will discuss about that, how you can study a particular formula in Excel. But how to use, just type is equal to, type average. Average is something, nothing but an arithmetical mean, which we calculate in school days, like, sum divided by number of data points in the data. And just select this entire data set and then click on enter. Now you can see we have got the answer, which is 27.57. Now here, what is something called as makeup in Excel. So just like, putting this data as 27.57143 is not very something soothing to the audience, right? So what you can do is that you can make up a number a bit. So how you can do it, you can go to the home tab and you can add a color here. You can add font color to this. So you can see I've made it yellow highlighted and red highlighted, and I can reduce the number of decimals. So I have a choice here to reduce the number of decimals. So I'm reducing the number of decimals and I'm just keeping it as 1 decimal. So the average age is 28 years of this particular batch size. That's my conclusion, right? So this is how you can clean the data in Excel and you can make meaningful insights out of the data set. So that's how, a real life case study, if you work in tomorrow in a corporate setup, this is how you would be cleaning the data. This is how you would be beautifying the data. This is how you would be making the analysis out of the data set. So let's see in the chat box if repeat again. I think I have repeated it once. Again, the idea of the session is not to do a very hands-on practice. It's also just to get the feel of how things work in an Excel setup. But I can repeat it in case you can have any specific question in mind. Repeating the entire module would be slightly difficult. So anyone has any specific questions or any doubts? But how many of you are able to, calculate the average age the way I have calculated? Just put a yes, no in the chat box in case you are able to do it the way I did it. Rashmi is able to do it. Bhavana, Meharsh is able to do it. Okay, that's nice. I'll just repeat it for the benefit of the larger audience. So let me just do a series of Control Z. So Control Z is a shortcut to do undo in Excel. So select the data, go to the data tab. In the data tab, you have something called as text to columns. Select text to columns. Select text to columns, choose the option is delimited, click on next, click on comma, click on next, and do it a finish. So the data is split across, then you go to any cell, type is equal to average, right? So is equal to average, type average. Then select the entire data set, click enter, you get the answer. Now we would be doing makeup of Excel. So why? I'll be doing it a yellow highlight, red highlight. You can increase the font size and you can reduce the decimal here. So this is way you can clean the data set and you can actually calculate, do some analysis, and you can communicate to your principal that dear principal, the average age of the batch size is 20. So you have finished one task as a data analyst. So this is how you work on an Excel with the help of different functionalities within the Excel. So now let's understand. So see, this session is just a 3-hour sessions, and there are more, I can give you 1,000 case studies. We don't have time to practice all the 1,000 case studies, but let's try and understand what we learned in this particular case study. So we explored the data tab of Excel, right? So let me just zoom in a bit. So if you can see this bottom, we explored the data tab in Excel. Now, as an instructor, I have the liberty to give you homework. So I'm giving you more homework in terms of what are the things you should be aware of. So now see, and this is an approach you should have, working on Excel as a learner, as a student, is that we go to a restaurant, right? And we observe things out there. So let's say if I ordered a pizza, I see what other people have ordered, and we are curious about it. He has ordered a burger, how it must be tasting, or this person has wear this particular jacket, where he must have bought it. So we are constantly curious and observing around the people, which is a good thing. We should be doing that, but we should be bring that curiosity in the Excel universe as well. So when we went to the data tab and I asked you to click on text to columns, and sincerely all of you did that. So the next question should be in your mind, Chinmaya, what can be this? Oh, so you can see this. Whenever you hold anything on the Excel screen, Excel gives you a tip, right? So can you read what's there in the tip? It's something called as flash fill, right? So you should be curious. This is flash fill in Excel. Okay, it's the new concept. Then this is something called as remove duplicates in data tab. So this is something I should be aware of, right? So all you have to do is Google, right? All you have to do is Google, what is data validation in Excel? What is consolidate in Excel? What if analysis? What is a scenario manager in Excel? What is a goal seek in Excel? What is a data table in Excel? So this is how you build the curiosity within you. The only thing which is going to stay with you lifetime is you, your time, and your resources. And given that internet is available at 100 rupees a month, all you have to do is Google search and find answers to your questions. So if you develop this habit of Googling the things and trying to answer the questions yourself, then you're going to be very far. You don't need any instructor, you don't need any trainer. I'm cannibalizing my own business or edtech business, but this is an approach or this is a thought process you should have in mind. And the next question would be, after you Google, in case you have any queries, then you should reach out to me or Pratibha and say, this is something, a new topic in Excel. Do you have any trainings or modules regarding this particular topics? And you should start learning them. So build that curiosity in yourself and start exploring things. This is something which is going to stay with you lifetime. This is a lifetime learning process, right? So this is how you should be learning in Excel. Now, second thing, now let's play a quiz, a random guess. So we used an average function here, right? We used something called as an average function here to calculate the same thing. So any guesses how many functions are there in Excel? So functions and formulas, I use them interchangeably. It's the same thing, we can use it extensively. So average is something one formula we used. VLOOKUP is something one formula we used. So any guesses how many formulas there must be in Excel? Formulas, functions, any random number of your choice. You just have to guess. I mean, this is also a sleep test to see whether the participant is sleeping or not on a lighter note. Any guesses how many functions or formulas are there in Excel?
Sir, as far as I remember, sir, it's 475, I guess.
Okay, who's this? Kunal. So Kunal is giving. Yeah, that's a very. I don't know, Kunal, if it's a right answer or wrong. Any other wants to counter Kunal? Maybe he was too rude to you during the college campus or college fest, and someone wants to counter him. Kunal is saying 475. And then I would be disclosing the most important trick to learn any function or any formula in Excel. So anyone, any guesses? It's just like a 2-digit or a 3-digit number, or maybe a 4-digit number. So just type it out and maybe, just guess and then just see. Okay, Anshu is saying 450. Okay. Pratibha is saying 350 plus. Okay, that's a very smart answer, Pratibha. She has given an upper range. So she is safe, even if the answer is infinity. Pratibha still has given a correct answer. Cool. So there are close to 500 functions in Excel. Kunal was right. close to 500 functions, close to 500. There are close to 500 functions in Excel. And how do we learn a function in Excel, right? Or how do we know that, a particular formula or a function exists in Excel? So there is something called as formulas tab here, right? So you can go to formulas tab and you can see there are lots and lots of functions or formulas here, right? So you have something called as recently used function. This is something like, depends on your usage. You have financial functions. Now, financial functions में क्या क्या cover होता है? Financial functions में we cover something called as NPV, IRR, like, PMT function. If you want to calculate EMI in Excel. So these are all functions which fall under the finance category. So if you're an MBA finance student, CA student, CFA students, this is an area you should be exploring, like, financial functions. Logical functions are like, if and or functions are there. Text functions are to clean the data in Excel. I'll be showing you one new function which has been introduced by Excel. So these are different types of text functions. Date and time functions are date and time function. Like, let's say if you want to calculate the last working day of an employee, right? So 3 months. So instead of adding 90 days, you can use a function to calculate that. You want to calculate the end of the month or the start of the month. So all these functions are date function in Excel. Then there's a lookup and reference functions. So VLOOKUP, index and match, XLOOKUP, all these fall under this particular category. In case you want to, like, trouble someone or like, brag how smart you are, you can just open this screen and show, maths and trigonometry functions. So all our childhood nightmares, they are sitting here, like, sine, cos, tan, theta. They are all also there in Excel. So understand, for us, Excel is like, about lookups and everything, but there is a good chunk of Excel which is used by academics, people working in academics, people working in engineering background. So they require all these functions like, sine, cos, tan functions, trigonometry functions. These are all sittings into like, different formulas and functions in Excel. So there are close to 500 functions in Excel. Now the trick on how to learn any particular function in Excel. Cool. So all you have to do is type a function name. So type is equal to, then type a function name. So let's type is equal to VLOOKUP. Now you need not type the entire function name, right? We all like shortcuts. So you can hit a tab key. So just type the function name and hit a tab key. Tab, T-A-B, tab key, and you can see that name pops up automatically. So this is another keyboard shortcut which is called as a tab key. So type is equal to the function name VLOOKUP, hit a tab key, and you can see automatically the entire function names pops up. Then you have to press something called as Control and A for Apple. So Control A, and you can see a function argument dialog box pops up, right? So if you want to understand any particular function, so you have to follow this particular step. I'm repeating it again. So type is equal to, type the function name. So let's go with VLOOKUP. Hit the tab key so that you don't end up typing it again. You can, if you love typing, you can type the entire name, not a problem. Then hit Control and A for Apple. You can see this function arguments names dialog box pops up, right? Can you guys see this function argument name dialog box? Pratibha, is it visible?
Yes, we can see that.
Correct. Now, if you want to learn any particular function in detail, Microsoft has already given you the explanation. So what do you mean by lookup value? What do you mean by table array? What do you mean by column index number? What do you mean by range lookup? All these things, right? So you can read these arguments and tips, and then accordingly, you can understand the function better. And there is something even more important, which is there in this particular dialog box, which is something called as help on this function. You can see it's a hyperlink. It's colored in blue. That means it's a hyperlink. So let's click help on this function and let's see where do we land up. So the moment I clicked on this function, can you see that I have landed up to support.microsoftpage.com, right? So this is a place where you can learn a particular function from the Microsoft page. So VLOOKUP is the function, and they have given a video, they have given how to get started, they have given you a few examples as well. So this is how you learn a particular function within the Excel universe. So just to share the trick, which I was sharing it right now, you just have to type a function name. Now let's do with VLOOKUP. Let's try XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP may not be on your system. It's there on my system because I'm on the Office 365 version, which is the most latest version. So just type the function name, hit a tab key, press Control A. You can see a function argument dialog box pops up, and there is something called as help on this function, right? So just click help on this function, and you are immediately landed to something called as support.microsoftoffice.com. So this is the official documentation given by Microsoft for this particular function. So you can read this. There is a video. Let's just see.
Use the findings.
I mean, my speakers are working. I just wanted to check that. So I played the video. So you can see the syntax is available. All the details, examples are available. So this is how you can learn any function within the Excel universe. You did not rely on anyone. Like you can just type out the name of a particular function. You can start learning it. So, so this was the small trick in terms of learning any particular function in Excel. So just try it out, guys. So I'm giving you a small task. You just type any function, favorite function of yours, and just see whether you get landed. Are you able to land to the Microsoft support page or not? And just let me know in the chat box which function did you type out, and were you be able to go to the Microsoft support page or not. So let's just see how much variety of functions we get into the chat box. So I tried VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP. So let's see which functions you tried and were you able to land into the support.microsoftoffice.page.com. So the question is just type out any function name which you were able to go to the support page and analyze and understand.
So we are able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, which function did you try? You can just mention it in the chat box. Neha said she tried sequence function. Okay, that's amazing. You can experiment, guys. There are multiple. Pie chart is not a function. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but yeah, I don't think pie chart is a function in Excel. Or let me just see if it's a function. Yeah. So this is we are exploring functions and formulas in Excel. So I'll just show my screen again because there are limited responses in the chat box. So you just have to take any function of your choice. Maybe let's say I want to type an edate function, right? Edate is a function in Excel. Hit a tab key, press Control A, click help on this function and just go to the Microsoft support page.com. That's all you have to do. So just let me know the function name and whether you're able to land to support page or not. That's all, nothing complex. So Ashish is saying that he tried HLOOKUP. Okay, that's nice. What about others? I can see so many of you in the meeting room. Bhavna tried XLOOKUP. Okay, that's nice. Rashmi tried VLOOKUP. Okay. Cool. So this is how you learn different functions in Excel. So we won't spend a lot of time in terms of okay, cool. No worries. Now let me just share my screen again and we will finish that particular portion of the case study with yeah. So now I talked about something called as dynamic arrays to you guys, right? So what's the concept of dynamic arrays? So if you understand what we did in this particular data set was right. I use the concept of text to columns to split the data. But there is a new function in Excel which is called as text split data. So you can see text split the data. It is asking me the delimiter. Don't worry about using this text split function. It's not there on your system. It's 99% not there on your system. So, and I'm just dragging this formula down. Can you guys see any observation when on my particular screen right now? Is there any thing which you are able to observe around my data set? Anything which is visible?
So phone numbers.
No, not phone numbers, Chinmaya Mail Hyderabad, where I've written.
From row number 4 to 10.
Yeah. So I'll just show it to you again. So I'm using a dynamic array function, which is called as a text split function. So text split this data set with a comma separator. And moment I hit enter, are you able to see anything? Are you able to see a thin blue line around my data set?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that thin blue line is nothing but the concept of dynamic arrays. So this thin blue line is the concept of dynamic arrays. So whenever you see a thin blue line around your data, you should understand that this is the concept of dynamic arrays. I'll tell you what's the relevance of dynamic arrays and what more in the later section. But this is how what's the concept of dynamic array. So this thin blue line which you see in a Excel file, this is nothing but a dynamic array. So this is another way to split the data with the help of a text split function, which is a dynamic array function, which is available only in the latest version of Excel. So it may not be available on your system. So that is the concept of dynamic arrays, which I was talking in the very beginning when I said about XLOOKUP and filter and everything. So just be aware of this. Cool. Now let me throw you another challenge. And this case study and this particular problem is more about the logical approach and while thinking about the data set. So I'm sure you must be doing like a lot of surveys and a lot of random forms. So these are some mobile numbers which I have received. And then I just want to clean this data set. Now let's see what's the challenge with this particular data set. Is that these are mobile numbers, but somewhere someone has added a 0 before a mobile number. Someone has added a +91 before a mobile number. Someone has added a +91 and a space before his mobile number. Someone has just given his mobile number. So there is no consistency in this data set. Now let's say I want to fit this number into some data set, some database to my college admin, and he says, "Ki Chinmay, I don't want haphazard data. Mobile number 10 digit ka hota hai, aap mujhe 10 digit do. That's what I want from you. I don't want this clumsy data. So you figure it out, you clean it and give me only 10 digits." So this is the question which the admin has said, and this is the data you have received from the survey. Now you have to be the middleman. You have to analyze the data, you have to clean the data so that you are able to send the correct data to the admin so that he can fit it in the college database. Right? Maybe he has some system he is using, maybe some internal software which they have developed. So how we can clean this particular data set? Now, before moving on to the Excel thing, just one more thing, guys. These are fictional numbers, so don't try dialing them. So you would get a not reachable number. Just don't try dialing them. So now my first question to you is, how do I clean this data set? Now, forget Excel for a moment. This question is not about Excel, so don't mention any formula function name in the Excel. What is the correct logic of cleaning this particular data set? I'm more interested in the logic. And as a data analyst, logic is more important than knowing Excel, because once the logic is clear, you can Google and understand Excel. But if the logic is not clear, then there is a problem. And developing knowledge is the function of a good analyst. You should be able to develop those logic. So in case I want to clean these numbers, like, I just wanted relevant 10 digits of a mobile number. How can I clean this number? How can I clean this particular data set? What would be the correct logic?
Just to give a command to take only the data to consider only the 10 digits from right to left.
Okay. So Meharsh is saying that, and Varshin has also given us an answer, is that 10 digits from the right side, right? So see, this is how you develop your intuition while working on Excel. So what's the relevance in this particular? See, you can see +91, and you can see after showing somewhere you see just the number, somewhere you see the 0. Then you understand the first logical question which I should ask is last 10 digits, right? Last 10 digits is what I'm interested in, right? Last 10 digits. But then what do you mean by last and first? These are all like, English terms. Excel doesn't understand them. So another correct approach would be last 10 digits from the right. Right? So last 10 digits from the right. So what I have to do is I have to get 10 last digits from the right. So there is a simple function called as right function in Excel. So all you have to do is type is equal to right and just refer it to the numbers. And then it is asking us the number of characters, right? So just refer it to the cell and just type 10. And you can see you're getting the number as right 10 digits. So are you able to understand like how we synthesize the problem? So how we first identified the logic and then we moved on to the correct solution, right? So what we did was we did is equal to right. We referred it to the text and then we added 10. So this is all you have to do. I'll just type the formula text here. So this is how you have to do. So are you able to get this particular number on your screen? Just let me know yes, no. Are you able to clean the first particular number, which is in cell B13? Are you able to do that? Yes, no. Okay. Anyone is struggling or having any queries? Just put it right away on the chat box, because now we are going to move ahead. So in case anyone is struggling to get the first output, then please raise it right now. Otherwise, you would lose track. Sandesh, Shubhangi, Aditya, Bhavna. Okay, everyone is able to get the answer. Anyone struggling? It's very straightforward, simple function. which is the right function in Excel, right? Cool. Now, what I should be doing is that I should be typing right and 10 again and again, right? This is how I'll have to clean all the data set, right? Right and 10. Is this the correct approach, what I'm doing?
No, we can just select the column and we can do, we can drag and we can select Control D.
Okay.
So that the
This is
same.
the correct option. Anyone? Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Anyone is happy with my approach? I'm doing it right? I mean, I'm using the right function and just typing it out again. Am I doing it right, wrong? Yes, no. I mean, do you like the way I'm so fast with my keyboard? Just see, how fast I'm typing, moving down.
But it's better to drag and just select Control D so that it applies, the formula applies to all.
Yeah. I hear you, Varshini. That's correct. So see, this is the fundamental concept of working on a spreadsheet, which is just doing one calculation again and then not repeating it, which is not available in your normal calculator. Right? So what happens in a normal calculator, like let's say you're working on a college assignment, and if there is any one sensitivity change, you have to perform the entire calculation again, right? So now let's take a very simple example, and this is the fundamental concept of spreadsheet you should be aware of, right? So we have a price of a product, we have the quantity of the product, and we have the total price, right? So we have 10 rupees of a product, like let's say if I buy 5 quantities and then I do A into B. So the whole idea of working in a spreadsheet and not working on a calculator is to build that flexibility. So if tomorrow the quantity changes to 7, I don't have to perform the calculation again. I automatically get the answer as 70, right? But on calculator, it's not possible. You have to perform the same function again. Is this possible on a calculator that if tomorrow price changes from 10 to 12, I get 84 as the answer, but on calculator, you have to do that step again. But on Excel, you don't have to do that step again, because that's the fundamental nature of how a spreadsheet is functioning and how the spreadsheet is built. So that's the crux of automation. So when I discuss about how the Excel was created, so I'll talk about the Excel history soon after this particular case study. So this was the fundamental loophole identified while working on a calculator and a spreadsheet. So how should I be solving this particular case study? There is something called the concept of dragging the formulas in Excel. So you write formula once, and then you use that formula across the array so that you don't have to type the formula again and again, right? So how would I be doing this? So I'll write formula once, and then I'll simply copy paste it. We are all experts at copy pasting, right? I mean, it's something which shouldn't be proud of, but we end up doing a lot of copy pasting. You just have to do a Control C and then do a Control V. So this is how you paste the data. You can see all the numbers are automatically corrected. Again, these are fictional numbers. Don't try dialing them. You would get disappointed. So this is how you can drag and drop the numbers into Excel. Now there are 3 approaches to do this. So first was Control C and Control V. Right? Anyone else is aware of any other keyboard shortcuts which we can use to drag the formulas? Just mention it on the chat box in case you are available.
Control D.
Yeah, correct. So Control D, D for down. So Control D is another shortcut, Control and D. So you can see and Control T. So this is another concept which you can do is drag and drop the formula. Then there is something called as a paste special in Excel, right? Yeah, correct. So that's also another way. You can see here, you can just do a plus here, plus symbol, and you can double click on this and you can see the formula gets automatically dragged. So this is also, you can do it with the help of a double click on the current cell. You can see a plus symbol and you can double click. So this is another way you can do it. So you can double click also on the cell. Then there is another approach which is called as a paste special dialog box. Is anyone aware of the paste special dialog box, like the keyboard shortcut to it? Note this down. Note this concept down. Paste special dialog box. It's something very important you should be knowing. And the keyboard shortcut associated with it. Write it 10 times, I would say. Just know. So the paste special dialog box is Control Alt V or Alt ES. Correct. So we have a lot of people who are well aware of what things happening in Excel. So Control Alt V is the keyboard shortcut or Alt ES. So what you can do is that you can see Control C and you can do a Control Alt V. This is a paste special dialog box which pops up. and then you can choose to choose formulas here and click on OK. So these are the different ways you can drag the formula in Excel. So I think we are clear. Can I use the concept of dynamic arrays in this particular concept? Yes, you can use the concept of dynamic arrays as well. So in case you are too lazy like me, who doesn't like to drag the formulas, then you can use the concept of dynamic arrays. So how can I do is that I'm doing a write, and then instead of selecting the first cell, I'm selecting the entire range, and then I'm typing 10. Can you guys see a thin blue line outside my box? Yes, no?
Yes, Chinmay.
Yeah, correct. So that's the concept of dynamic arrays. So there is no concept of dragging required when you are working on dynamic arrays. You can select the entire range and you can type one formula which automatically spills across. So you can use the concept of dynamic arrays to solve particular problems. So another way is doing it with dynamic arrays. So far, so good. Anyone has any doubts, any queries, feel free to ask. So just to summarize what we discussed on this particular case studies. So we learned the idea of how a data analyst actually works. How do we clean the data? So we learned the concept of text to columns. Then we learned the concept of calculating the average in Excel. Then we learned there are 500 formulas in Excel. Then we learned how we can study a particular formula in Excel by going to the Microsoft support page. Then in the case study, we tried how we can clean the phone numbers which we had by using the write function. And then we understood how we can drag the formula down, with the help of Control-C, Control-V, Control-D, double-click, Alt-TSV, the paste special dialog box, and something which is called as the concept of dynamic arrays, which is the most recent update in Excel. So far, so clear. Anyone has any doubt, any queries, feel free to raise it right away. Then something which, as a trainer, as an instructor, as a teacher, I don't like, calling myself as a teacher, I call myself as a trainer or a presenter, because teaching is a very huge responsibility. But coming to the point, as a trainer, I'm giving you some homeworks. So in terms of the homework is that you should be learning these different functions in Excel. So we learned here write function in Excel, right? So write is just to get data from the right. So there is something called as left function in Excel. There is something called as a mid function in Excel. There is something called as a length function in Excel. So these are all the functions which are very relevant in a corporate setup. These are used daily basis by a consultant, by an investment banker, by an equity research analyst for cleaning the data, for making meaningful insights out of the data. So you should be aware of these 4 functions. So like maybe I want to spoil your Sunday plans if I have the liberty to. So you should be learning and Googling about these functions. In case you face any challenges or you face any struggle, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to Pratibha. I want to learn these data cleaning functions. Do you have any modules, or you have any trainings associated with that? And maybe you can take some help of an instructor to learn this. Or in case you want to learn it on your own, you can learn it by directly going to the Microsoft support page. So this was about how I just wanted to give you a vicarious feeling of how things actually move in a day-to-day world, how you get the data, how you clean the data, and how things happen on a real-time basis, and how do we develop the logic first, and then we come to the solution with the help of Googling. So this is what what was this entire text function case study about. So is everyone comfortable? Like anyone has any queries, any doubts? More than happy to. Please.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, you can ask.
I'm just curious to learn, in this column A, on the second number, there is one small green bar above the number. So can I know why is that popped up all the time? So is there any kind of answer for it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And what was your name? Oh, I missed your name.
Mahesh.
Mahi. Yeah, you have name after our ex-Indian cricketer. That's a good thing. So yeah. So that's a very good and an interesting question. And the answer to that particular formula lies here. In formulas tab, you can see error checking symbol here, Mahi. And here, are those 2 symbols same? The symbol which is there on the top left here, which I'm highlighting, and the symbol which is here. You can see both the symbols are same, right?
With different, like there has a check mark there in the above one.
Yeah. Both the symbols are same, right? Error checking symbols. So these are an error checking symbols which are built in within the Excel to tell you that Excel feels that there is some problem in this particular formula. Excel feels that there is some particular problem in this particular cell. The data which you have input is slightly incorrect. So therefore, there is an error checking mechanism. So you can check the error, and then Excel is asking you, ki this number is stored as a text. Do you want to convert it to a number? So that is the reason that Excel thinks that there is some error in this particular formula, and therefore it is hinting you, ki just come and investigate, is there any error in this particular cell or not? It can be an intentional error. It can be an unintentional error. This is just an Excel way of communicating that I feel there is an error. You can please confirm. So the error this is happening in this particular case is because Excel thinks that this is particularly a number, but this data is getting stored as a text format. So that's the error about.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyone else has any other question? Shiv Shankar, I read your question. Please show an example of a mid function. So I'll just give you an example of a mid function. So now let's take an example of an email ID. So this is my personal email ID, chin.amte@gmail.com. And yeah, in case you want my number, I'll just type out my number as well here. It's +919967799680. Just a minute. So these are my contact details. Now to answer your question, Shiv Shankar, is that where can you use the mid function? Now let's say I want to extract just the domain name from this particular text. I just want the domain name, which is Gmail, right? And all of you others, you can also answer this particular question. So this is like, Chinmaya@facebook.com. Yeah. So guys, can you tell me if I just want a domain name? So basically I want the output as Gmail and Facebook. Is it possible to get me with the help of a right function or a left function? The answer is no, because you are here, you have something called as gmail.com, and here you have something called as facebook.co.in, right? So both the places, the data is not in sync. So here you can use the concept of mid function. You can use a concept of find and the mid, combination of find function and the mid function to get the domain names. So when you want the data within the text, like from the middle, you can use the concept of mid function. I hope Shiv Shankar, I answered your question clearly.
Yes, sir, I got it.
And I've also shared my LinkedIn ID. So there are 2 sets of homework which I have given you all, right? So anyone remembers the homework? Which are the 4 functions you have to learn? So these are the 4 functions: left, right, mid, length, and text. These are the 4 things which you have to do as your homework. I mean, this is something which will help you to grow as an analyst, to analyze the data better. And the second and the most important homework is to this particular LinkedIn link and click on the follow button. That's also part of your homework. So just kidding. So this is how, like, you work on a real life case study on a data sets. So this is, you can notice the spelling, so it's not as exciting as you think. But let's understand the most important concept, which is there in Excel, because you, as a business analyst, or as any working any data set, the most fundamental thing is whether it's you're analyzing stock prices or employee data or sales data. One of the most important concepts in Excel is about the date, because any data is associated with the calendar to it, like the time when the event happened, and that's how your data is created. So we have to understand the concept of date in Excel, and we with that we understand, like, how actually Excel understands numbers, text, and everything. So those were the dating tips I was talking about. No apologies if you are disappointed. So let's try and understand, like, any guesses. Again, I keep on asking the questions. Any guesses when is like the birthday of Excel? I mean, I call it as happy birthday of Excel, but any idea like when is the birthday of Excel? Any random guess? Or maybe like, when, like what's the first day in Excel or anything? That's all. Cool. So let's do one thing. It's not actually an happy birthday of Excel. It's actually when the Excel computation engine starts. So the Excel computation engine starts on 1st Jan 1900. And let's understand, like, what do I mean by 1st Jan 1900 and the computation engine and all those terminologies which I'm throwing to you on a pleasant Saturday morning. So just bear with me. Just type this on your cell, 1900. Just type 1900 in this particular cell. And then we will be learning two keyboard shortcuts, which are Control, Shift and 1 and Control, Shift and 3. So these are the two keyboard shortcuts we would be learning. So just type 1900 on your system and just go to here date tab and convert it to a number. So you can see the first step is to type 1900, go to the date tab and convert it to a number, right? Then just go below the cell, type 30th Jan 1900 here. Just go to the, again, go to the date tab here, which is on the home in the number section, and just convert it to a number. Are you guys getting these outputs as the answer, which I am getting, like 1 and 30, like anyone? Yes, no on the chat box. So those of you joined late, I'll just repeat what we are discussing. So I'm going to give you some dating tips on this particular tab. You will understand the concept of date within Excel. So I asked you the question, when is the happy birthday of Excel? So none of you answered. So I give you two tasks. Just type 1900 in your system, 1900. And then just type 30th Jan 1900. And once the dates are filled, you can just go to the home tab and convert them to a number. Right? So we tap 1 Jan 1900 and then we convert it to a number. Are you guys getting this output on your systems? Yes, no. So Ranjana is getting an answer. Anyone else? Only Ranjana is getting the answer, or only Ranjana is paying attention. Okay, Sandhya has got the answer. I like the competitive spirit. Anyone else?
I think, Chinmay, not everyone is in front of their laptops because I can see a few of them in class and all. That is why.
Yeah, cool. Not a problem. Anyways, this is a master class, so it's not necessary that you practice it hands-on. By the way,
you can always go back and practice these things when you once you understand the concept here.
Correct. Pratibha, I was expecting answer from you as well. Yes.
Yes, I already know that.
Cool. So now let's just understand what has happened. Like I typed a date and it got converted to a number. So that's how a date works in Excel. Date is not a date in Excel, it's a number. Every date is stored as a number in Excel. So now let's type today's date into the Excel. So we will type control and semicolon. So let me just go to a cell which is D11 and let me just type control and semicolon. This is a keyboard shortcut to get the current date in Excel. Control and semicolon. I'm just typing it out here, control and semicolon, which are the two dots. So just type this control, go inside a cell, So you can double click and go inside a cell, or you can just click on the formula bar here, this is called as a formula bar, and just type control and semicolon to get the current date in Excel. So you can see 26/11/2022, like 26th November. This is today's date, which we are putting it into the Excel. And then now you can do again the same thing which you were doing. You can just go to the date and you can convert it to a number. So can you see 44,891 as the answer? Right. So two things. What you have to do is you have to enter today's date. You can use the keyboard shortcut control and semicolon, or if you like to type, you can just type out the today's date 26/11/2022, and then you can just do a control shift. You can just go to the date and you can convert it to a number. So can you see a date was converted to a number, right? Why the date got converted to a number? Because that's how the dates are stored in Excel. The concept of date is nothing but a number in Excel. the Excel's computation engine starts on 1st Jan 1900. So 1st Jan 1900 is the first day in Excel. So therefore, when I type 1st Jan 1900 and I converted to a number, it got me answer as 1. So when I type 30th Jan 1900 and I converted to a number, I got 30 as the answer. Because Excel calculates the difference between the first day and the subsequent days and stores that number as a date in Excel. So what is this 44,891? 44,891 is nothing but today's date minus 1st Jan 1900 and the difference of number of days between these two dates. So 44,000 days have passed, 44,891 days have passed from 1st Jan 1900 till today. And this is how the concept of date is stored in Excel. Are you guys clear with the concept on how a date works in Excel? So there is no concept of date as such in Excel. It's a number. And that number is calculated between 1st Jan 1900 till today. And that's how you are getting 44,891 as the answer. So that's the concept of date in Excel. Anyone has any doubts, any queries, please put it in chat box. Because understanding the concept of date is very important if you're working on Excel or any other analytical tool. Yes, no, are you guys comfortable with the concept of dates? If it would have been a lunch break, I could have understood a lethargic response, given that we had a heavy lunch, but it was just a water break. Okay, so I can see Sandhya, Ranjana, Kunal, Meharsh. Okay, everyone is putting as yes. Cool. So I'll just briefly explain you in a very short period of time. So the Excel's computation engine starts on 1st Jan 1900. Memorize this, ratify this. So 1st Jan 1900. On this date, the computation engine of Excel starts. So this is the first day. Today's date, the keyboard shortcut is Control and semicolon. So I put 26/11/2022 as today's date. So the date is stored as when I go and convert this to a number, I get 44,891 as the answer. So why 44,891 is associated with 26 November 2022? Because that is the number of days, the difference between 1st Jan 1900 and the date which we are importing. So A minus B, the simple concept of A minus B. So that's the whole concept of dates in Excel. So that you should be aware of. Then we would be discussing some keyboard shortcuts. So like, let's say I input today's date. So the keyboard shortcut is Control and semicolon, right? And if I want to convert it to a date format, to press Control Shift and 3. So Control Shift and 3 converts it to a DD-MMY format. So you can see DD, MMM and YY format. Control Shift and 3 is the keyboard shortcut. Don't use the numpad, use the keyboards over your letters. So use the keys, numbers which are above your letters in keyboard. Don't use the numpad, it won't work. Keyboard shortcuts work only when you are using above the letters wali keys. So Control Shift 3 is the answer. This is how you convert a date. Control Shift 1 is converted into a number format. So if I press Control Shift 1, it gets as a number, which is 44,891. If I do a Control Shift 3, it gets converted to a number. So that's the whole concept of date in Excel. Are you guys comfortable with the concept of date and the keyboard shortcuts associated with it? Just put a yes, no in the chat box so that we can move ahead. Cool. So everyone is comfortable with the concept of sorting the date. That's amazing. Now, one more important thing which you guys should be aware of, and this is not going to be hands-on because we are recording this video and it would be available on EduBreach. What's the YouTube channel name of?
Yes, it's Learn Online with EduBreach.
Yeah, so Learn Online with EduBreach. So this is the name of the YouTube channel. So you can go and hit the subscribe button for this YouTube channel. I've already done that, Pratibha. So we have 1 subscriber. So this video will be recorded and it will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. So in case you are struggling with any part, which I'm going to show now or earlier before, you can go and watch the recordings. So those will be available. Now, I just want you to introduce your concept of sorting the data in Excel. So whenever you're working in, and this is not a hands-on case study. So don't try and do it yourself right now. Just see what I am doing, understand what I'm doing, and you can watch the recording to understand how I did it and why I did it. Cool. Now, if you see this particular data set, this particular data set is arranged in a descending order, right? So Jan 21 is first data. And then I have December 19. Who organizes the data in ulta? Like, this is a reverse calendar order. Latest date is first, and then December 19 is the last, right? I don't want data organized in a descending order. I want to organize my data in an ascending order. So what do I mean by ascending order is that 31st December should be first. Jan should be after this. So one way I can do is I can copy paste the data. So I'll just copy paste this here. So 31st December 19. Then I'll go again 31st Jan 20. This is the correct way to sort the data, right? By copy pasting. The most efficient way of organizing the data. Because we got the data in a reverse order. Now we don't have any choice and have to arrange it in an ascending order. This is how we do it, right? Anyone, any suggestions, any thoughts? I to do it this way only. I think this is the most efficient way according to.
Do we have any participant who wants to comment here anything? Just type yes or no if you are if you agree with Chinmaya's current method. I guess they're still thinking.
So see, I am the instructor for this particular program. So whatever I'm doing is correct, right? This is correct way, right? To copy paste the data, so sort the data. Let's see. No. Okay, it's good. It's good to have some rebellious students. So this is not a correct way to organize the data. So there is a concept called as sorting in Excel. Now, how do you sort the data in Excel? So there are a plethora of options to do that. There is something called as sort function. So there is a function called as sort in Excel, which is available only in Office 365. There is another function which is called as sort by function. This is also available in only Office 365. So I would suggest you can Google about these functions. You can read about this function. So this function helps you to sort the data in Excel. In case you are not working on the most recent version of Excel, so in the data tab, there is something called as sort and filter tab here, right? And this is one of the most important tabs you should be aware of while working on Excel, because see, any data which you give to the client or to your colleague, it should be sorted. If you are giving a population data, it should be sorted descending to top to bottom descending. Calendar data should be organized. So all the data sets which you are giving, it should be organized. Otherwise, the data is meaningless. It's not very intuitive to the user to understand this. So I want to sort this data. So how do I sort this particular data? I go to the sort tab here. Again, this is not an hands-on exercise. Don't practice it on your system. Just see what I'm doing and understand what I'm doing, and we will move on to the next topic. So just click on sort. Now you can see here. So again, just select the data. Any first step is to select the data, go to the data tab. And in the data tab, you can see here, there is a concept called as sort and filter. So this sort and filter concept helps you to do all the sorting and filtering of the data set. So just be aware of this tab, Google this, there is something called as advanced filter. So just be aware of this. Go to some sort. A dialog box pops up. Now, what's the homework you guys should be doing is that, can you see a question mark here? There's a question mark help section here, right? So you should always be curious and click on this question marks, because this will take you to the Microsoft support page. And from that support page, you can learn, what are the functionalities in case you are not clear. What do you mean by add level, delete level? So you can learn these things on your own by going to the Microsoft page. So this is one way to learn. Now I have to sort the data here. There is something called as options. So in the options, I'm clicking something called as what is the orientation of the data. So these are fundamental things you should be aware of. This data is not top to bottom data. This data is left to right data, right? Because my data is across columns. It's not across rows, right? You can see my data is there in B, C, D, E, F, O, right? And top to bottom, there is not much data. So therefore, I'm choosing left to right as my sorting option. I'm choosing left to right, click on OK. Then I want to sort on the row number 6, on the basis of row number 6. So I am choosing row number 6, and then I'm sorting the data as oldest to newest, and I'm clicking on OK. You can see now my data has been sorted. December 19 is first and Jan 21 is the last. So I'll just do a Control Z and show it to you again. You can see here Jan 21 is first. I want to sort the data, so I select the data. I go to the data tab. In the data tab, I go to something called as sort. In the sort, I select something called as options. I select something called as left to right. I click on OK. Then I go to row number 6 and I sort oldest to newest and I click on OK. Now you can see my December 19 is the first data and Jan 21 is the last. So this is how I've sorted the data in Excel. So this is how you do sorting and filtering the data in Excel, which is another important concept you should be knowing with Excel is that, so on this tab, we learn the concept of dates in Excel. We learn the concept of sort and filter. So these are the three things which you should be aware of while working in an Excel environment. Okay. So these were the concept of the concept of date sorting, filtering in Excel. So this is how you should be exploring different tabs in Excel. Now let's understand few more tabs in Excel. So there is something called as page layout here, right? Now what's the concept of the page layout tab within the Excel and why it exists? It exists because in case you want to print the document, you want to print the document. So how do you print it? You print it usually on an A4 size paper or an A3 size paper. So you can go here and you can decide the margins, you can decide the print area. You can assign those page breaks, insert page breaks, and if I just click here. So see, this is you can see this, the array and the outline has changed. So the concept of this page layout tab. So I'm just covering what all are different tabs which we have left to cover. So the concept of page layout tab is nothing but to just arrange icons. So let's in case you have images in your Excel workbook or logos and anything. So this particular tab helps you to align those images, align those logos and stuff. And it helps you to set up the printing document, the printing style of your document, like when the page 1 should start, when the page 2 should start. So that's the whole concept of the page layout document. In terms of the formulas tab, you already discussed what's there in the formulas in Excel. So we discussed at length, the formula library in Excel. There is something called as name manager in Excel. Just be aware of this, what it exists. There is something called as precedents and dependents, which is more of an advanced concept in Excel. But just be aware of this. So in case you want to analyze any formula and you want to understand from where the formula is coming, you can use the concept of precedents and dependents in Excel. We discussed about error checking because this was the formula which was raised by one of the participants. And these calculation options are something again related to more and advanced stuff. So nothing to be worried of. Again, we discussed a data tab in depth and in length. So I will be discussing something, the concept of Power Query in Excel with you guys today. So I'll just give you a flavor of how Power Query actually works and what is the Power Query editor so that you are aware and the use cases of it. And we again discuss the data tools. Remember, we use the concept of text to columns. Then we use the concept of sorting and filtering. So we use the concept of data tab also while working on Excel. Now let me just come to the review and view tab, and then we will move on to the concept of VBA macros and Power Queries, and then we will have an open Q&A and we'll call it a day. So what does review and view tab actually do within the Excel and why they are sitting within the Excel universe? So so the concept of review tab, as the name suggests, it's about the review. So let's say you send me a CV, Chinmay, can you review the CV? So basically the another word for review is, can you check the CV? Can you do an assessment? So review tab is generally with the help of assessment of the data set. So you can see in the review tab, we have something called a spell check. So the keyboard shortcut for spell check is F7. Thesaurus, F7 is the keyboard shortcut. So you can do a spell check within Excel with the help of the review tab. So that's the concept of review tab. Then there is something called as workbook statistics, right? So it helps you to quickly understand, what's the size of the workbook. Now, let's say your client sends you a file, you are working on a real life scenario, real life case studies, and your client sends you a file, and then, boss asks you, okay, Chinmay, what's the update on the file? What do you analyze about the file? What do you think of the file? Now you just have 1 or 2 minutes and you want to quickly analyze, boss, what do you think of the file? So what you can do is you can quickly go to workbook statistics and understand how many sheets are there in the file, how many data sets are there in the file, how big is the file, how many formulas there in the file. So it's a very quick assessment to understand, what's the basic structure of the file before you go dig deeper into the file. So that's the concept of workbook statistics in Excel. Now, there are 2 and the most important concepts in the review tab, which is something called as Excel comment and Excel notes. So what do you mean by Excel notes? Excel notes is an old feature. The keyboard shortcut for a particular note is Shift F2. The Shift F2 is a way to add a note in Excel. And if you want to add a comment, you can press new comment in Excel. So the keyboard shortcut for new comment is Alt-RC. So you can add a new comment into the Excel. Now, what's the need of this show notes and show comments? It's to have an effective communication. In case you want to add a note to a particular cell that, I'm not sure about this data set, or, this looks correct, right? You remember I shared with you this data set, or maybe like any other data set, like, like let's say this is the data set and you want to add a note, like, you feel that the sales data is wrong. You can hit Control Shift F2. You can hit Shift and F2 key, and you can quickly add a note to a particular set. Can you check this data again? Can you check this data again? So this is how you add notes to your particular file. Another important keyboard shortcut, or like, again, this is a master class where I want to give you some lifelong learning tips. How to understand a particular keyboard shortcut. So how you can do is you can press an Alt key on your keyboard. And can you see the moment I click an Alt key, there are a lot of options popping up. Are you able to see this? See those options? The moment I hit an Alt key, can you see a lot of small letters popping up? So this is a way, like, Excel tells you that's the next step. So I want to move to the review tab. So I'm pressing R. And after I press R, I can press C, which is a new comment, right? So Alt RC is a way to add a new comment in Excel. Press Alt, you see a lot of options, press R and then press C. So this is the way you can add new comments into the Excel. So the note feature, which I was asking, it is an old feature. It is a legacy feature in Excel. Now the most recent feature, which we are using in Excel, is the Excel comments. These are just a way to collaborate between the things. So now let's say if Pratibha is looking after the sales data, so I can simply mark Pratibha. So if you are working on a team setup, I can mark Pratibha and she will get an email notification. That's how advanced Microsoft has become in terms of collaboration. I can tell, Pratibha. Yeah. So Pratibha, can you check the sales data? And I just have to press the enter, and then Pratibha will get an email notification. It generally happens when you are in that Office 365 environment. It won't happen right away. So that is the concept of adding notes in Excel, adding comments in Excel. This is for effective collaboration. When you are working with 3 and 4 people, then you can effectively collaborate in this particular way. So that is the concept of notes and comments into Excel. And now more about the view tab. So view tab is about just like, aesthetics. Now, if you can see, I was showing the screen, like, I zoom in and zoom out a bit. So like, you have those options available, like, zoom percentage. So this is 100%. I can zoom into, like, let's say 200%. So those all options are available. Aesthetics options are available in the view tab. Now you can see my file does not have grid lines. So if I go to view and I do a grid line, you can see those thin gray lines popping up and popping down. So those are called as grid lines in Excel, right? So in case you don't want to show the grid lines, you can just simply go to the view tab and uncheck this. So this view tab is more about the aesthetics. How do you want to look at the data? How do you want to have the zoom percentage? That's about the view tab in Excel. So if you see, we almost covered everything in Excel, right? We covered what's the concept of review view tab. We understood the data tabs. We understood the formulas, like different formulas, the different sections here. We understand the concept of page layout. We understood the now only 2 things are pending, which is home and the insert tab. Again, home tab is nothing but it is something like a generic, the most things which we had used. So if you remember, we had I had called you when we were calculating the average age of a particular batch. So you remember here in this particular case study, when I was calculating the averages, I used this concept of number, or while using the date column, we had used this section of home tab. So these are all alignment options, like in case you want to have a fancy font. So all those things are available here quickly. So those are there on the home tab. There is something called as analyze data here, which is something, an artificial intelligence feature, which is available in Excel. So if you want to quickly analyze the data, right? So I'll just show you how it works actually. So see, let me just so see the beauty of Excel and the artificial intelligence which is there in Excel. So I select this data and I just click on analyze the data. Can you see I am getting some insights at the very right? See, Excel has automatically created a pivot table and is showing me that there are 3 males in Hyderabad, 1 male in Mohali. There are total 4 females. Like, it is immediately showing me a chart. It is also creating a chart for me. Like, these are the different types of data sets which Excel is helping me create. So this analyze tab, this is a new feature in Excel, right? This is based on artificial intelligence. So you just have to select the data and click on analyze, and it shows you very quick insights on the data. So this is something how, Excel is progressing on a day-to-day basis, on a daily basis. And that's why it's very critical to have Office 365 or the Microsoft 365 with you on your systems. So that's the concept of Excel. Home tab in Excel. Insert tab is about inserting data from various sources. So like, let's say if I want to insert a text box. So if you can see, I've written a task here, right? So how did I insert this task text box? I just went to the insert tab and I did an insert and I inserted a text box. So this is how you insert the data. Like, let's say you want to insert an image into Excel. You can just, go here and insert few images into Excel. So this insert tab is all about bringing data outside Excel within the Excel. So that's the concept of the insert tab. And then you have something called as pivot tables here. So the concept of pivot tables is also sitting into the insert tab. I'll talk about pivot tables in the end if we get some time. So that's more about the insert tab. Well, now let's talk about something which is very important in Excel, which everyone should know. It's about something called as Power Query in Excel. So this is just going to be a theory lecture on Power Query. What's the concept of Power Query, and you should be knowing it. So if you remember this screen where I was taking down notes and everything, so I told you which is something called as very important concept in Excel, which is called as Power Query, right? So there are 4 or 5 use cases of Power Query. Is that it helps you analyze rows more than 1 million data sets. You can do something called as web scraping in Power Query. And third, you can do text cleaning and analysis. So the concept of Power Query, it lies in the data tab. So you just go to the data tab, and in the data tab, you can learn something here which is called as a get data, right? So in case you want to get data from different sources. Now let's say you have a PDF file and you want to import that PDF file into Excel. So you have that option as well within the Excel universe, is that you can import a PDF file into an Excel, and that PDF file gets automatically converted into a number format, into an Excel file. So let's say you're posting an annual report, right? You're posting an annual report and you have a balance sheet data into that, and you want to convert that balance sheet data into a number format, into a table in Excel, so that you can analyze that data. You can do a ratio analysis. So how you do that? So you go to the get data file, you get data from PDF, and you can convert PDFs into Excel. So that's the use case of Power Query. Then here is something called as get data from the web, right? So let me just show you how you can get data from the web. Yeah, now I want to ask all of you a question. I want to get this data into my Excel file. So how can I get this data into my Excel file? What's the easiest way to do this? The answer is very easy.
I think there might be an option like export data.
So, I mean, I'm on a web page. So I want to get this data into my Excel. So what should I do? How should I get this data? It's a very easy answer.
There would be a
Control C, then go to Excel and Control V.
Perfect. So what you should be doing is that you should be selecting the entire data and do a simple desi copy paste, right? I mean, that's the way to do the things. But see, I'll tell you what's the problem with copy pasting. So I just do a copy paste. I go to this particular masterclass session, and maybe I can just add a sheet here and do a copy paste. So I'm getting the data, not a problem. But the problem with this approach is that it's a copy paste method. It can be prone to error. And second thing is that it's not static. It's static in nature. So tomorrow, if I have a 2023 number, right, again, I have to go to this website and copy paste, right? And then I'll boast I'm working till 10 o'clock in the night. But what you are doing is that you are creating an inefficient process by bringing in copy paste in the process. You should leave office at 6 o'clock in the evening. That's the objective. So for that, you need to bring in automation. How do you bring in automation? So with the help of Power Query, you can do web scraping. So how will I do this? So I copy this URL. I go to the data tab. In data tab, I get data from web. So it asks me like, URL. I punch in the URL. I click on OK. Now it is establishing the connection. And you can see this is something called as a Power Query editor. And this is not technically a Power Query editor. It's a navigator box. But from here, you can move to the Power Query editor. Can you see the navigator dialog box on my system? Yes, it's visible, right? Now you can see here something called as table 0. So the moment I click on table 0, you can see I'm getting a table view here, right? I can load this data to my Power Query editor. So I can transform this data set. Like, let's say, let me just go to click on transform. This is called as a Power Query editor, right? So you can do transformations on this data set. Like, you can clean the data, you can analyze the data, and then you can choose and close this data. I didn't do any transformations in the interest of the time. Now, moment I click load this data, you can see this data is getting loaded into my Excel. So see, instead of doing copy paste, I got the same data in a very wonderful formatted style into my Excel. And the beauty of this data, it is auto updating. It is auto refreshing. So all I have to do is right click and do a refresh. Sorry, the refresh option is available, I think, in the query section. I have a refresh option available. So all I have to do is a refresh. I just have to click on refresh. And if the website is getting 2023 data, automatically I get the 2023 data into my Excel. I don't have to do copy pasting again and again. So that's the beauty of Power Query. You can do web scraping with the help of Power Query. So that's the concept of Power Query in Excel. So data tab, all this get data option is nothing but the concept of Power Query. Power Query will form your base to do Power BI. So you master or you learn the Power Query in Excel. And once you start learning the Power Query in Excel, you can move on to Power Pivots. You can move on to Power BI, right? So Power BI, the base of Power BI is Power Query. It's the same engine, like Power Query, the Power BI, Excel, it works on the same way. Power BI has some advanced feature, but this is the concept of Power BI, Power Query, web scraping in Excel. So just be aware of this particular concept. Are you guys comfortable with the idea of Power Query?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Anyone has any doubts, any queries, any curiosities about Power Query? Do you find it helpful? Like, just let me know yes, no. Like, did you find Power Query helpful and relevant?
It's very helpful actually.
Darshini is like the most active student in the class, active participant. That's a good thing. Bhavana is saying yes, Mahi is saying yes, Neha is saying yes. I think we have a lot of yeses in the chat box, so that's a very good thing. I think we have touched based upon the concept of Power Query also within the Excel universe. So now let's move on to the two topics. So like the things which we discussed in the beginning. So see, another concept which I would like to introduce is a concept of Quick Access Toolbar, QAT, Quick Access Toolbar, QAT. The concept of Quick Access Toolbar is to help you speed up things in Excel. You can see I have added so many options on my Quick Access Toolbar: values, switch windows, increase decimal, decrease decimal. So whatever options which you use on a frequent basis, you can add them to your Quick Access Toolbar. How do you create your Quick Access Toolbar? You go to File. In File, you go to Options. And in Options, you have something called as Customize Ribbon. And you choose options here. So this is the concept of Quick Access Toolbar. You did not do it, like just know it. You can watch the recording and see. File, Options, and you can go to Customize Ribbon and you can quickly customize your ribbon here. So I've added a lot of options on my Quick Access Toolbar. So that is just one concept you should be aware of. QAT, it is popularly called as QAT, Quick Access Toolbar. So I'm using switch windows and I'm going to the master class case studies. Okay, I'm already here. So these are the things, which helps me to speed up things. So we touched based upon the concept of Power Query as well. I think I closed that file. So let's just allow you more movement. I'll just open that session notes on file. Correct. So these are the different the things or the notes which we were discussing in the background, at the beginning of the session. So if you understand, we touched based upon the concept of basics of Excel. So we understood like if function, VLOOKUP, SUMIFS, COUNTIFS. These come under the basic topics. We learned about the advanced Excel. I mean, I just mentioned or introduced the topics. Obviously, it's not possible to cover all of things in 3 hours. Then we understood the concept of dynamic arrays, like, the thin blue line, which is around my data set, that's called as dynamic arrays. And then we touched base upon like, what's the concept of power query, or like, what's the concept of power pivots, or data cleaning or web scraping in Excel. So these were the 4 topics which we discussed. Now, what we would be doing is that we would be understanding the concept of VBA and macros in Excel. So before I start, anyone has any ideas on like, what's the concept of VBA macros in Excel? Okay, Nihai is saying no. Cool. So let me just reshare my screen again, and I'll quickly help you understand. So this was a LinkedIn post which I wrote like very few months back. Let me just put the URL also for everyone in the meeting in case someone wants to access it. So what's the concept of VBA macros in Excel, right? So now let's take about this. So let's go with a very standard format, or like, standard question. So like, what's the full form of VBA? So VBA stands for like Visual Basic for Applications. So, and it's a programming language like within the Microsoft environment. And one very important thing which people usually miss out is that VBA is not just limited to Excel. It is also relevant in Word and PPT and Outlook. So VBA macros is not just something which is relevant to Excel or PPT or Outlook. It's not just relevant to Excel. It's available everywhere, like Word, PPT, and Outlook. Now, like, what's the concept of VBA and macros? And I'd like to give you a metaphor which is like very helpful in understanding the concept behind it. So now I am talking you to an English language, right? So we are talking in English, maybe some bit of Hindis. So this is the language which I'm talking. So every language, like whenever I say about a particular language, like let's think about an English language. So English language is about like, like let's say if I want to learn English language, what should I be knowing? I should be knowing grammar. I should be knowing punctuations. I should be knowing the basic alphabets or like, letters like A, B, C, D, E. These are the things which I should be aware of when I'm learning a particular language, right? So that becomes form of VBA. So VBA is nothing but an English language. Think of that simile, think of that metaphor, and then think of macros. So like, let's say with the help of English language, what we do, I'm giving a speech. So with the help of English language, I wrote a speech. With the help of English language, I wrote a letter. Like with the help of English language, I wrote an answer in exam. I wrote an article in newspaper. I wrote an essay. So that article, that essay, or that letter, that becomes a macro. So what's the difference between VBA and macros? VBA is a language. So if you want to learn a language, like let's say you want to learn English, so you learn ABCD, you learn grammar, you learn punctuation. So that's the part of VBA. And with the help of that English language, we communicate our thoughts, right? We write an essay, we write a letter, we write an article in newspaper. So that essay or a letter, that becomes a macro. So that's the fundamental difference between a VBA and a macro. Is everyone clear with this logic? So as I have told you, so using the English language, we write articles, essays to communicate our thoughts. Similarly, with the help of VBAs, we make macros to communicate actions that needs to be performed to the computer. So, so there are 4 use cases of like, learning the concept of VBA and macros. So in the beginning of the session, I had asked you how many functions are there in Excel, right? Anyone remembers the answer, like the ballpark number which we had discussed?
Yeah, it's close to 500.
Yeah, correct. So there are close to 500 functions in Excel. But what if even those functions are not relevant for you? Or like, those functions are not relevant, I would say, are not sufficient for you. You need a function which does your job, like, which is something more, which Excel is not able to provide you. So there comes the concept of VBA. So there is a terminology which is called as a user-defined function. So you create your own function into Excel, right? So there are 500 functions in Excel, but those 500 functions are also not doing your job. You need to have a function which does a specific task which you have told Excel to do, right? So there you can create this user-defined functions, your own functions in Excel with the help of VBA. So VBA unit supplements the Excel. So any limitations in Excel, it is taken care of in the VBA domain. So you can create your own functions with the help of VBA and macros. That is one concept. Second concept is that you can do a lot of scenario copy pasting and you can do a lot of looping in Excel. So what usually happens, like what's the use case of VBA macros is that, like let's say you want to do a particular task, but you want to do that task again and again, again and again. You want to repeatedly do that particular task. So you want to automate that particular process. So that again is taken care with the help of a VBA and a macro. So what happens is that like you write a loop. So there is a concept of loop in Excel, right? And these are the words which you should be aware of, like in case you are curious about VBA and macros. So there is a concept called as looping in Excel. So what happens is that you write a for loop, do while loop. You write those loops, and with the help of those loops, you automate your own process. Like, you automate the chunk. Instead of doing one thing again and again, again and again, you write a loop and that action happens on its own. So that's the concept of looping in Excel. So for loops, do while loops, these are different loops in Excel. So understand that. Anyone asks you, okay, what's the concept of VBA and macros? It helps you to do automate tasks. It helps you to do one task again and again. So it is looped in. So that's the concept of VBA and macros you should be aware of. You should be able to tell people. Third thing which you can do with the help of VBA and macros is you can create your own keyboard shortcuts into Excel. Now, if you see, if I type Control Shift and H, can you see my screen getting highlighted? Are you guys able to see? If I press Control Shift and H, you can see my screen is getting highlighted, right? So it won't happen in your systems. It's just happening in my system because I have written a VBA code to do that. So you can create your own custom shortcuts with the help of VBA and macros. So these are some backgrounds, or these are some helpful resources. This is a context of what is VBA and macros. Now let's say you want to learn VBA and macros and stuff, right? So, and then there is a concept of add-ins in Excel. So you can see I've added this add-in called as Excel Power Pivots. So these are different add-ins in Excel. So remember this word Excel add-ins, and you can just Google add-ins. So just wanted to know, which are the apps which you use in phone. You can just put it on the chat box. Which are the apps which are there on your phones? Which are the most popular apps you use on your phone? Just randomly put whatever apps you are using. Mahi Singh WhatsApp, okay. I'm shocked to know that you guys don't use smartphones. Zerodha, Insta, Snapchat, okay. I've never understood the use case of Snapchat, and it was Telegram. Yeah, that's very helpful. That's powerful. Zerodha, yeah, that's a very good brokerage app, right? So yeah, correct. LinkedIn, Grow, everything, right? Quora, exactly. I don't know if people are still using Quora, but I used to read a lot, before. So that's the concept of app. So what we did was we went to a mobile store, we bought a mobile, we downloaded the Play Store, we started using the phone, but we felt a necessity of having another app which was not there in my phone from the beginning, right? So I didn't like the messaging service of my phone. That's why I went and downloaded WhatsApp. I wanted a platform to communicate to a large scale audience. Therefore, I downloaded Telegram. So all these are different apps created by developers which support us and makes our daily lives better. Similarly is the concept of Excel add-in. So Excel add-ins are something which helps you to improvise your Excel. Like let's say you have a very specific requirement and you want to fulfill that requirement, just like a WhatsApp or an Instagram or Telegram. So there are Excel add-ins. So just think of Excel add-ins as these WhatsApp apps, and you can go and download, these add-ins. So I have ASAP Utilities, Kudos Tools, Inquire. So all these are different add-ins. You can just download and explore these add-ins, and you can explore them, start exploring them, start using them. So this is the way you can download different add-ins and use. So just think of add-ins as the concept of different apps you use on your phone. These are to make your Excel better, right? So this is the concept of VBA, macros, and add-ins in Excel. So that's the context of what is VBA, what is macro. Now let's do a small hands-on. So let's do a small hands-on exercise, like how can I access the universe of VBA and macros into Excel, right? So there is a very small trick to it. How many of you have this developer tab active on your system? Yes, no, do you have developer tab? Let me just see if my screen is not visible. Just a minute. Yeah. how many of you have developer tab activated on your system? Rahul has. Ranjana also have. Pratibha does not have. Yes, no, yes, no. Neha does not have. Okay. So those who do not have the developer tab activated on your system, then you should write a letter to Microsoft that, like, we don't have the developer tab activated on your system. So are you planning to write a letter to Microsoft that the developer tab is not activated on your system, or does this seem to be a trick question? So don't write to Microsoft regarding the developer tab. You can go and activate the developer tab on your own. So just be with me. Go to File. In the file, go to Options. And in the options, you should go to something called as a Customize ribbon. And in the Customize ribbon, you would see a developer tab here. So just click on Check and click on OK. So again, I'm repeating it. Go to File. File, you go to Options. Options, you go to Customize ribbon. Go to Customize ribbon. Here you go and check developer tab. So you check it and you click on OK. And that is how you get developer tab on your systems. I'm repeating it again for the last time. Pay full attention. File, Options, Customize ribbon, File, Options, Customize ribbon, and here you would find something called as developer. So just check it and click on OK. That is important. Okay, someone is saying that Snapchat is for young people, Maybe I'm a bit old, that's why I don't know about this app. But yeah, that is how you activate the developer tab. Are you guys able to access the developer tab now? Yes, no? Neha is
Yes,
saying,
sir.
okay, Mahi is saying yes, okay. Cool, congratulations. So now
Yes, sir.
we are developers. You can boast that we are developers. We have developer tab activated on your systems. So cool. So this is the basic. The developer tab is an entry. It's an access to the universe of VB and macros. So you can see here something written as Visual Basic. It's written as macros, right? You have something called as record macro here, right? So these are the options where you can go and record stuff. So you can record a macro. Like let's say you don't know how to write a code, so you can go and record a macro. You have the concept of add-ins, right? We discussed about the apps, WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat. So these are the add-ins where you can go to the Microsoft store and install some add-ins on your system. So you can explore, like what's Wikipedia add-in, like document review के लिए कौन सा add-in है, education के लिए कौन सा add-in है, maps and feeds, like you can import some maps, like ready-made maps into Excel. So this is the concept of add-ins. So this is the universe of developer tab. Through developer tab, you can access VBA macros and add-ins. So that's like one very big chunk, one very big universe of Excel. Like it's completely different planet, and it's a very interesting topic. It's a very difficult topic to have, but once you are good with VBA and macros, you can be super smooth. Like one task which takes you around 2-3, like 5-6 days, 7-8 days to do it manually, you can do it literally within 1 hour with the help of VBA and macros. So that's the concept of like VBA and macros for you within the Excel universe. Cool. So is everyone clear with the concept of VBA and macros? Anyone has any doubts, any queries? That's a good question. Silam Barasan, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. So VBA or a macros concept, it has not been updated much since 2008. So even if you have a 2008 system, VBA and macros should still function and it should still work. Cool. So let me just do one thing. Let's target this particular case study. It's a very interesting case study. Most of you are from finance background. Again, like let's do it very quickly. One very important concept which I want to imbibe you in this particular concept is the concept of solving one particular problem with the help of multiple functions, right? So what I should be doing here is that I'll just introduce you to this particular data set. It's a very simple data set. We will be working through the if function. But then the idea of this case study is how can I solve one particular problem with different functions? So just I'll give you a brief idea about what's this about the data set, and then I'll cover the concept of data tables as well, which you guys might not be knowing, but that will not be a hands-on. So just come to this particular data type, which is called as modeling and data tables. These are Microsoft 2021 financials. This is very simple, plain vanilla, like, income statement, nothing fancy here. So you can see I have sales, I have cost of goods sold, then I have calculated the gross income, SG&A expense, EBIT, non-operating income, operating expense, pre-tax income, income tax, and net profit, right? So I have a very simple task for you. Assume that the net profit is 30%. Assume that the net profit is 30%, and tell me what would be the income tax amount for this particular year for Microsoft. So very simple task. Assume that the tax rate is 30%, which I have written 30%. So see how most of you might have solved this. You might have simply done is that pre-tax income into 30%. Right? This is how you usually solve this. And then you would have multiplied it with -1 because we are keeping all expenses as negative. Right? But there are two fundamental problems with this particular approach. One approach is that you have hard-coded a formula within, within the formula, you have hard-coded a number, which is not a best practice. So what you should be doing ideally, and I'm going very fast because this is not supposed to be a hands-on example, just try to get the flavor of what I'm doing. So just see, I'm multiplying the cell above and I'm referring it to the cell below. So now what you see, the difference between this approach is that since I'm referring it to this 30%, now the user has a switch, right? He can switch 25% here, 15% here, 30% here. So he gets a switch. So never hard code a formula within, never hard code numbers within the formula. That's one of the most primary learning which we have done. So never hard code formula. And second thing is that, is this formula correct? Like, what do you think, guys? Is this formula correct? Will this formula work in all possible situations?
Sorry to interrupt, Chinmaya. May I know what's the exact meaning of hard code?
What's the exact hard code? As in, you type something out within the cell. So instead of referring it to the cell B19, what I'm doing is that I'm doing 30% here. So that means it is hard code.
Okay. I mean, you mean to say that we should always refer to the cell instead of value.
Yeah, you should always refer to the cell because then it becomes clear, right? For a user, he can simply change the tax rate here. You can simply change the tax rate here and you can see the impact. So he doesn't have to go and edit the formula. That's the helpful thing. And then again, you have all the list of assumptions side by side. Right now, if you hard code everywhere, so then how would you know, what are the things or the assumptions you have made? Now, if I have done 15 assumptions here, I automatically get a list of 15 assumptions. So I can go and consult the tax experts. These are my assumptions. Are this correct? So it helps you in organizing the data in a very structured format. So that's what I mean by hard coding. These are some best practices to work while working on financial modeling.
Yes, thank you.
But still, there is one fundamental problem with this formula. Can anyone guess, what's the problem with this formula? Anyone would like to try? Is this formula correct? I mean, I understand I have written the formula, so it must be correct. But is there any mistake? We all agreed that 21,000 is the correct answer, and then I wrote the formula. And
Sir, minus, it's showing minus, sir.
No, it should show minus. All expenses are shown as negative. So all expenses are negative. So it's not a mistake. Anyone else would like to point out mistake in this particular formula? Minus is not a mistake because we are getting all expenses as negative numbers. Decimal, no. Rahul, you wanted to say something?
So we can freeze the tax rate, sir.
No, even that's not a mistake in this particular formula. It's just you have to develop this logical thinking. That's very important and that's very critical.
Maybe the currency?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe the currency part, because we don't know whether the amount is in euros.
No, not really. Not even that. I mean, it's more of a logical or a business related question. Let me just do one thing. I'm increasing the cost of goods sold by an insane amount. Now, is this formula working correctly? I changed the cost of goods sold. Is the formula now giving us a correct answer?
No, because we have added -1.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not just because of -1. Even if you do a -1, that's not a problem. But is this formula giving a right answer now? It's not
no,
giving a right answer because, yeah, Varshini, let me complete. When you are making a loss, you don't have to pay any income tax to the government. The income tax amount you pay is 0 rupees. Now I'm not getting into MAT, credit, set-offs, if someone is from CA background and all those unabsorbed depreciation, all those complexities. I'm assuming a simple tax structure that if I make a loss, I won't pay tax to the government. If I make a profit, I'll pay 30% of the profit to the government. So is this formula doing our justice? Now, given this background, now let's say if I just change this, the amount of tax I'm paying should be 0, right?
yes,
It is
yes.
paying me as 1 crore 56 lakh. So how can I fix this?
I think we should add brackets instead of minus symbols.
Minus is not an issue. Just forget minus. Just trust me, minus is not an issue. It's a fundamental logical issue. I cannot hear you. So I'll tell you what's the fundamental problem with this particular formula. This formula itself is wrong. You should never write a formula in this particular way. You should write a formula with an if statement. So what should be the correct formula? If my pre-tax income is less than 0, then I don't have to pay any tax. So I'll write 0. If it is more than 0, then give me B13 into 30% into -1. Now this formula is correct. See, now if I'm getting this answer, I'm getting 30,000 as the answer. And moment my cost of goods sold increases, now you can see my answer is 0. Are you clear with the concept of if statement?
Yes, Chinmay.
So this is how you write. This is how a good analyst writes the formula. You should think what are the possible business scenarios which can happen. Today it is happening in this particular way, but what if next year I have a loss? You have to think for that next year situation and then write a formula in that way. That is the core concept of financial modeling, right? In case like I wanted to touch base on financial modeling as well. So this one example, keep it in your mind throughout your life that whenever you are making a loss, I shouldn't pay the tax, but when I'm making profit, I should pay the tax. So I want to incorporate both this situation in one single formula. And this logic of writing the formula with the help of if statement is nothing but financial model. This is how you build financial models. Financial modeling is nothing, a lot of complexities involved, but this is how, you code formulas when it comes to financial modeling, which are working in all possible business scenarios. So that is the basic idea of financial modeling. This is how you build financial models. This is how you work on financial modeling while working in Excel. Now we did it with the help of an if function. I can solve this particular formula with the help of max function as well. So I can write this particular formula is max. I'm just showing it to you. You can Google understand how max formula works. Max of 0 or this into this. Into -1. So you can see now if I do this, I'm getting the answer correct. Right? With the help of max function also, I can solve this particular formula, which was already there in your sheet. Right? So another key aspect or another aspect which I wanted to build in with this particular example is that whenever you are working in Excel, you can solve one particular problem with the help of multiple solutions. So you can solve it with the help of if, you can solve it with the help of index and match, you can solve it with the help of VLOOKUP. I mean, there can be multiple possible solutions possible for one particular problem or a case study. So what you should do as a downtime analyst, what you should be doing is that, I'll just stop sharing my screen. So as an analyst, what you should be doing, or as a student, what we should be doing is that whenever we are in the downtime, I would learn and solve one particular problem with all the possible solutions, all the possible methods, right? And I have a very wonderful analogy for this. Like, let's take an example, like we are a cricket batsman, we are a sports player. Now, and I want to score a century. So I want to, score runs, right? So I can score runs with a cover drive, on drive, straight drive, sweep shot, single, sixes, fours, right? So it's a combination of multiple shots, which helps me reach that target of 100 runs. So similarly, you as an analyst, so you should solve one particular challenge, one particular problem with if, then try it with VLOOKUP, then try it with index and match, then try it with max. So one particular solution can be solved with multiple different formulas. So always try that. When you are in downtime, you practice it with multiple different strokes. And when you are in a real life situation, you can use the best tool, which is, you feel which is relevant in that very moment. So that's, so, like that's something which is a very important habit to have, like, as a data analyst to like, self-learn things. Now, in terms of the learning resources, so I have already shared this particular file with you. I'll just go to my LinkedIn and show you a few learning resources. So generally people ask me, Chinmay, like, what is the best place to learn Excel or, do the skill-based courses? So these are some list of popular trainers, like, these are Microsoft certified, Microsoft professionals. And these are very popular and very senior in the industry. So I've given a list of trainers, like whether it's Leela Garani, Bill Jelen. So you should follow their YouTube channels. You should follow them on LinkedIn. You should follow them on Quora. You should follow them on their website. And you can learn from this thing. So see what happens is that whenever we open our feed, like, Instagram feed, like we see all those, photographs and parties and everything. So we get distracted. So what you can do is you can create your another account. Like, let's say, your dummy account, and you can just follow people who are relevant about this Excel modeling, analytics, upskilling industry. Like, you can follow pages like EduBridge and all. So that when you open that account, you just have those relevant stuff in your feed. So that, you create a universe where people are just discussing Excel, right? So you are aware about all these things happening in the world. So that is the best way, like, to surround yourself with all these things so that whatever you're doing, like, you have the best people in the industry, you're following them. And then, like, that's the very best place to learn. And usually in a face-to-face class, like, I do a quiz. So I show a photo of Virat Kohli. I show a photo of, like, Justin Bieber, maybe Angelina Jolie, like, all these celebrities. And then I show photos of, maybe Bill Jelen or Leela Garani. We know Virat Kohli. We know who is, like, Justin Bieber, but we don't know who is Leela Garani. We don't know who is Bill Jelen, right? So that's the limitation we have imposed on ourselves, that we are not following the right people in the industry. And that's why our upskilling journey is, some bit at a hall somewhere. So this post is like an exhaustive resources of the people who are, like, well-versed in the industry or senior in the industry. So you can just follow them so that, you are aware about the right learning resources to learn about the industry. Then I have written few more posts. I won't go into the detail because you have already the links. So I have written, like, how you can use the concept of school maths. So here in this particular post, I've used the concept of prime numbers. So I have used the concept of prime numbers, how, like, prime numbers help a person analyze the data, and like how you could use the daily mathematics to, solve a real life business study problem. So these are all different posts you should be following, like, you should be reading. That will give you good insights into how data analysis is done. Then in this particular learning resources or learning post, I've given an exhaustive list of financial modeling in Excel. So if you want to learn financial modeling, so these are the different, like, learning resources which are available, like, the organizations which hire for financial modeling roles. So Mazars, F1, F9, Gridlines, these are organizations which have specialized financial modeling teams. So in case you want to make a career in financial modeling, so these are the learning resources, or these are the companies you should be targeting. So these are some learning resources, some companies which are, potential job hires which you should be following. So these are the posts. Just go through those, all the posts, read the post, and also do like the like button also on the post once you read it. Do that as well. So these are the posts which help you, in terms of learning resources, how you can structure your journey and everything. Now, the last and the most important thing is that how I can bring my Excel skills on my resume and CV, right? So this is the one thing which everyone should do, is that never write basics of Excel and like, advanced Excel on your CV. These are meaningless terms and they don't hold any value, right? So let me just see if I have that post available. So again, this is a LinkedIn post which I had written on how you can bring out, like, CVs, how you can bring out your CV points into Excel. So see, I've written here, knowing the basics of Excel is just like adding Maggie to your cooking skills. And this is like a very blunt statement. Like, you cannot say that, I'm a cooking expert if I know how to make instant noodles. So similarly, if you say basics of Excel is everyone knows, you're not bringing any value to the table by stating, basics of Excel. That is something you should already know. So instead of just writing, like, basics of Excel, what you should be writing is that what do you exactly know in your what do you exactly know in Excel? So you can write basics of Excel, and in the bracket, you can write, I know VLOOKUP, pivot tables, dynamic arrays. So that gives a very good flavor to your CV that this guys know stuff. You're mentioning the specific points. So that is a very important thing you should be doing to bring out these things into your CV. Second and the most important point which I would like to write is also write your CV in an impactful way, right? So now let's say someone we discussed about data cleaning. So someone would write in his CV data cleaning using Excel. Now this is not going to add a lot of value or add a lot of attention in the eyes of recruiter. So instead of just writing this way, data cleaning and Power Query, which is a very boring way of writing in CV, you can write in this particular way, cleaned MIS data to the tune of 1 lakh rows using Power Query and functions like substitute that improve the efficiency, error, and speed by 90%. So you know Excel, right? This is a very good thing. You took efforts, you attended this webinar for 3 years, so for 3 hours, you did certifications, but you should bring all those things into your CV as well. So how do you write it in CV? That you write specific points we discussed, and then you bring out, by using this type of impactful lines. So these are some of the things you should be you should be aware of, while making your CV. While putting that Excel things which you have already worked on into your CV. Another important point which you should be doing while working on Excel is that you should be making projects while working on Excel, and you should put those projects into your CV. So I'll just show you a few projects which my friends have done. So, so again, this is a post which I had written on the 17th October. It is celebrated as World Spreadsheet Day. So just go and read this post. That will give you an idea about when the Excel was started. So it was started in 1979 and 1985 Excel was released. So this post will give you a brief background about this. So the last and the most important tip which I would like to give you all was in terms of how to build projects out of Excel. So pick up your textbook. If you have understood payback period, calculate payback period, create a project out of it. Upload all those projects on Google Drive and then hyperlink those projects into your CV. A lot of freshers complain that Chinmay, my CV is short, I don't have anything to add. Create all these projects, upload them on Google Drive, keep them on public access, and hyperlink all those CVs, all those projects into your CV. So add a separate section called as projects, and add all those projects into your line. So make a list of 10 projects and keep them on your CV. So any person who goes and clicks on that hyperlink and sees your Google Drive, he would immediately understand that the person has worked on Excel projects and he's very good with Excel. So that is another way to stand out from the crowd. So create projects, and projects can be anything. Pick up your area of interest. Like let's say you like football World Cup is coming. So analyze data of football World Cup. Make a project out of it. Upload it on Google Drive. COVID cases happened. So make dashboards for COVID cases. Upload it on Google Drive. So whatever is your area of interest, pick up that area of interest, create a project in that, and you can upload it on Google Drive and hyperlink it on your CV. So that is how you bring out your CV from the others. That is how you stand up. So just to summarize, it's exactly 1 p.m. So what we learned in today's session, we understand the need of Excel. Then we understood the gamut of Excel. Then we understood the different hands-on exercises of how you can learn different things within the Excel environment. And then we learned also how to learn learning resources, different resources. We took some hands-on example. We touched base on Power Query, VBA macros, and the last and the important tip was the learning resources and how to bring out things in my CV, in my resume, how to create projects so that I get those relevant interview calls and opportunities. So with this, I would like to end today's session. So I'll take a 5 to 10 minutes small Q&A. I would like to thank Pratibha and EduBridge organization, for organizing this wonderful workshop and helping us connect and being able to spend this 3 hours productively. Just small request, you can put your questions in the chat box. Just one thing, in case you want to reach out to me, so I'll just mention my contact details. So these are my personal number. This is my name, Chinmaya Amte. This is my personal WhatsApp number. So feel free to ping me on WhatsApp anytime in case you have any queries. Do let me know the feedback of the session also personally over WhatsApp, in case you want to share. So you can communicate. This is my email ID in case you want to share any documents. And the most important takeaway from this session is that you have to click on this link and hit the follow button on LinkedIn. So this is my LinkedIn ID as well. So with that, I would like to end the session.